Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code STARDUST to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hey, this is Catherine Tabor, Senator Padme Amidala from Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Jay and Dennis on Podcast Stardust. Stay on the light side.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
Our coverage of the Acolyte begins today. But first, Jay, remind everybody where we can be found around the internet.
All right. So we can be very easily found on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is lying. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, Jay, this is the first time you and I are recording like a month because I was on vacation and we recorded a whole bunch of stuff in advance with some friends that we had on for other episodes. They stuck around and recorded some bonus stuff. And then we did the Phantom Menace trivia episodes. We did our Rebel Moon discussion. But it's been a while. And, the Acolyte started like in the middle of my vacation. And we got 4 episodes that have come out since then. So we're trying to play catch up. And so, first off, so it's good to be back on the microphones talking Star Wars with you.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is that it's probably apparent that my voice is not the same. I'm getting over a bug here. So thanks for sticking around and putting up with this alternate Dennis voice. And I hope by the time we're recording next week's episodes that I'm better on that. But that's what's going on there. Okay. But the Acolyte. So we had a 2-episode premiere back on June 4th, and we've had 2 more episodes since then. We're halfway through the series at this point. We're going to get into some non-spoiler overall thoughts, and then we're going to talk a bit about the episodes after that. So, Jay, take it away. What do you think of the series so far?
Well, I got to watch the first 2 with my oldest son, which was definitely a treat because I only get to see him once every few months. And so we were super excited to be able to tune into this together. And the first 2 episodes were quite a wild ride indeed. And we were both kind of left like, what did we just see? Kind of thing. And so just trying to dissect that. And he had absolutely no experience whatsoever with the High Republic. So he was coming into that completely fresh. Which was kind of cool to watch it with someone that had such a fresh perspective, just kind of going into it completely without any prior knowledge whatsoever. And it kind of helped me a little bit as well, because of course, with all of our previous discussions, we'd had such, raise the bar so high as far as what we were going to see and what to expect and everything like that. And overall, the series for me has been kind of a roller coaster ride. There's been some things that I've really enjoyed and appreciated about it. And then there's other things that kind of fit like a new shoe that aren't very comfortable just yet and have kind of left me with a few blisters is the best way that I can explain it. I'm trying to keep my eyes open in terms of my overall outlook on things and giving it time, because I know that we've been told that this series is going to be just when we thought it was one thing, it was going to be something else, which yes, it has been, but it hasn't settled well with me as well as I hoped that it would. And so in that way, I'm maybe disappointed in myself,
Mm.
in some ways that I don't like it as much as I had hoped that I would, but, I mean, we've got a lot of Acolyte left, and there's definitely some awesome story beats in here, and I'm excited to talk about all of that, but overall, it's like I said, it's been kind of a roller coaster for me, up and down a little bit, and so I have to reconcile that. But,
Mhm.
what about you?
So I like this quite a bit. It's a series that I really can't judge until I've seen the whole thing. And why is that? It's because it's a mystery. This
Mhm.
this really is a big mystery as to what's going on, and we'll get into some of the details of what about that mystery as once we kind of get past our non-spoiler thoughts here. The other thing that is kind of annoyed me a little bit with this show is that we were taught they hyped up the action that we were going to see and all this kung fu action stuff like that, and then they showed all of it to us in the trailers.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the past couple episodes that we've had have been action light on that, and so I was like, well, I hope there's a lot of stuff that you haven't shown us in the like second half of the season because you gave it all away otherwise in the trailer. So I'm hoping to see more of that. But I do like the mystery, and at the moment, you it seems very straightforward. But again, they've been teasing that it's got levels. It's not going to go the way you think, and you kind of talking about yourself about like adjusting your expectations. I remember when this show was first announced, it was not billed about the action. It was billed as a dark side mystery
Right.
on the fringes of the High Republic. And I really wish they'd kind of stuck with that as their way of promoting the show because that's what this has been. And I've been fascinated by some of the developments and thoughts and things that they're putting out there. And we'll get into that as we go in discussion. So, anyway, I like it. I'm glad I'm watching it. It's it's this absurd comparison I'm going to make right now, but I'm reminded of Andor because Andor was a very different type of Star Wars show. This is a different type of Star Wars show. It uses some of the same type of techniques that George Lucas would use. The dialogue frequently reminds me of the way that George Lucas would write dialogue and have characters say things. It's kind of clunky at sometimes,
Mhm.
but that makes it sound like Star Wars, if you know
It's
what I mean.
true. Yep.
So, at any rate, it's a very different type of thing compared to all the other Disney Plus products that we've had.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
and to your point about the whole George Lucas thing too, I
mhm,
noticed even some of the screen wipes and some of
mhm.
the iris, opening and closing between different scenes is very George Lucas-esque as well.
Yeah, Lucasian, however people want to say it these days.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, that's the non-spoiler portion of this. Let's kind of get into some of the details. Our first episode opens with May. This is a character that they've been building all along, this dark side type assassin looking person, showing up at a cantina and then beating up a whole bunch of people to get at Jedi Master Indara. And we see almost that entire fight, like I said a moment ago, in the trailers. We just don't see the final outcome, which is that May actually ends up killing Master Indara because she throws a dagger at an alien. Indara stops with the Force, which creates an opening for May. What'd you think about that with Carrie-Anne Moss's character biting the dust like right off the bat in the show?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that's like, what did we just see? Because
Mhm,
I totally did not expect that at all.
mhm,
Because, feeling like Indara was just going to be one of the main central characters throughout the entire series. But
mhm.
what did you think?
Well, we've had an opportunity to see this character again in flashbacks in a later
Right.
episode, so that's great. So I'm glad it was not just like, "Hey, thanks for coming on for 15 minutes of screen time." Not
Yeah.
even that. But I got spoiled on this,
Mm.
which was so hard to do because this show came out on the 4th, and I didn't get a chance to see it until the 14th. And
Hmm.
by that point, it was very hard for me to open the internet, let alone social media, without getting some kind of a spoiler about that. So
Sure.
there was a lot of elements of the show that I just had to deal with spoilers. And hey, you know what? I was not giving up my vacation so that I couldn't be spoiled
No.
on a Disney Plus show, and I'm good with that. But that being said, it's the fight was cool. I still liked watching it. It was nice getting to see it like all in one chunk as opposed to broken up the way we had it
Hmm.
from all the different trailers and stuff like that. But it does establish some stakes very early on.
It does indeed.
Okay, but then the other big thing from this is that we realize or we learn that Amanda Stenberg is playing two characters in this show. That she's not just playing May, she's playing May's twin sister, Osha. And so we have a light side character and a dark side character. Um, I did see spoilers about that one too. And so I'll say this. I was surprised to learn that, even though it was a spoiler. But how did that land with you when you were watching it?
Well, after the fact, I had people that said, "Oh, yeah, that was so obvious because one had short hair, the other one had long hair. Like, how could you not know that they were twins? That was set up beforehand." So I was kind of left feeling like I did in The Last Jedi, where, silly me didn't realize that Luke was projecting a force vision of himself. And oh my gosh, I should have realized that his beard was shorter and da 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 da. So it was almost kind of that sort of mirrored image of that as well for me. But it was like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Mhm.
And of course, we've had so many instances of twins in Star Wars before. So I just felt like that was another kind of a, ring theory sort of a thing, which was, I thought, a nice touch. And I was completely floored by it. Did not expect it at all.
Yeah, okay, so I wouldn't get down on yourself for not realizing that. I mean, we had no clue going into the show that she was playing two roles. They only build the character of May. I didn't see anything about Osha,
Mhm.
prior to the show coming out. Osha, Asha, however you want to pronounce it. And it is interesting. The evil twin thing seems a bit daytime soapish, but it works in the story, especially when we get to the third episode and they
Yes.
explain that background. So I like that. And it does add an element to the mystery that we've got going throughout this series so far, which we can talk about, especially after it gets um, developed a bit more. But no, all the promotional material about this was that they set May up as the character that Soul had trained some point, and that Soul wanted to bring in.
Mhm.
And that's not what that was at all. He wanted to bring in Osha because that was his Padawan at one point. But speaking of that, we had an opportunity to see images of May in trailers and previews and things like that. But Asha Osha, she was a brand new character that they really did save for that first episode. What did you think about her?
Oh, I just loved her, honestly.
Mhm.
I just thought she was kind of a mix between a Rey and, this character that I feel like we're gonna see in the video game Outlaws,
Mhm.
and, just this kind of innocent, if you will, sort of character that was all about doing the right things, but, obviously had left for her own personal reasons.
Mhm.
But what about
Yeah,
you?
yeah, no, I like her too, and I also like the costumes that they've been giving these characters. So,
Yeah.
Maze, I thought has always been cool. It's some sort of Japanese ninja samurai type of a costume, which I think has always been great. But Asha's reminds me of like the High Republic costumes that they had for the smuggler characters.
Mhm.
And I remember talking about that with my boys. Is like, did that look familiar to you? Does that look like it's straight out of the Old Republic? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So they did a good job with that. And I think this was all put together absent Shauna Tripchick, right?
Yes.
So this is like one of the first projects where for Star Wars that she didn't get to work on it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But still, they did a good job with the costume design despite that.
Mhm. I agree.
And then we get this new term, mechanic, out there for someone that works out like on the hull of a ship as in place of a droid. That was and that just like rolls right off their tongues, like they've been saying it forever.
Right, and it was almost as if this was something that was like a thrill seeker kind of thing that only the, like, crazy people were mechanics because
Hmm.
who does this? That's why you have droids.
Hmm. And then the big action sequence after some of the fights is we get the crash of the prison ship, and we get the character defining moment for May when, or not May, Asha, when she's being held prisoner. The other prisoners want to escape. They're going to engineer this. She doesn't want any part of it. But then when they disable the droids and the ship's crashing, she has no choice. And she still goes back for the violent prisoner that is being sedated by that little creature over its mouth, only for that guy to get up and betray her and take the last escape pod on that. So What were your thoughts on the crash and escape?
Didn't surprise me that these people that were on this prison ship would completely betray her and be all for themselves because, I mean, they're on a prison ship, hello, and, so, yeah, so that was not surprising to me whatsoever, and again, it speaks to her Osha's character in that it sets her up to be this compassionate, empathetic soul sort of
Hmm.
thing, so it worked. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like in later episodes, we get some yin yang type imagery that's around, especially around Kanalaka's lair. There's some of that, and it's like very much prevalent with Asha and May. May's wandering around murdering people. Asha's
Mhm.
doing the opposite. May wears these dark clothing. Asha's sometimes is just like white, not pure white or anything like that, but you know, uh, it's not like hit you over the head obvious, but it's
Mhm.
very clear that they're setting these up as, two different, the yin and yang type, even though they're twins and they have intertwined destiny, they have different motives and different morality coming down to it.
Right, and
Mm.
at one point in this episode, and I can't remember exactly when it is, maybe it was when she was fighting with Indara,
Mhm.
is that May's marking on her head
Mhm.
becomes apparent,
Yeah,
and so we know, from the get-go that that's how the 2 of them are sort of identified
indeed,
in
indeed.
terms of being differentiated.
And then the end of this episode debuts, or for the series anyway, the master is what they've been calling him or her or whoever. I have no idea who this character is, but standing up on a rock. We've seen this imagery in the trailers. It ignites the red lightsaber, and it's saying to May that an acolyte kills without a weapon. An acolyte kills the dream. And what gets taken away from this in the other episodes is that May has to kill a Jedi without using a weapon.
Right.
Is that too literal an interpretation of what this guy just said? Or is it that, what he was saying is that it's not so much that you're killing a Jedi, you're killing a dream, and you do that without a weapon. Does that make sense?
Right, that the weapon in and of itself is not something that's tangible.
Mhm.
The weapon is, figuratively speaking, that it kills hope, it kills, those kinds of things. It kills the light of the force, so to speak, is the way that I interpreted it.
Yeah, right. The point is that it's not so much you're killing a person, is you're
Right.
killing an ideal, you're killing a dream, you're
Mhm.
killing something there, and that's something you accomplish without a lightsaber, without
Right.
a dagger,
Right.
without a knife.
It's
So,
through the actions that
but
you.
it seems
Mhm.
like they've been hung up on this whole notion that she has to kill a Jedi without using a weapon. And so, like
Exactly.
when we get to the fourth episode here, and they go to Korloff, whatever the name of that planet is, and she plans on killing Kanaka bare hands. It's like,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah,
hold
she's
on,
gonna, yeah.
what are you doing? So,
Right.
all right, well, let's get into some more of the details from the second episode. And this is when May is going after Master Torben, who's played by Dean Charles Chapman, and he's taken the Barash vow, and he's on the planet of
Hello?
Malega. Yeah, and he gets there, or she gets there, May gets there, and she can't kill him. She's trying to throw punches. He's in meditation. None of them are landing. There's some sort of a force barrier. And then eventually she has Kamir. We get his Premier, played by Manny Jacinto, to make a poison out of what are they? The bunta leaves from her home planet.
Mhm.
And she like doesn't even have to convince Torben to take it. He just snaps out his meditation and swallows the poison and dies on this.
Yeah.
And he says to her, it's like, we were doing what we thought was right. Okay, so we don't really know the backstory yet at this point when this episode comes out. But what'd you make of all this?
This did not sit well with me at all because when Jedi take the Barish vow, as we know, it's because they feel like they've done something that has separated them from what it means to be a Jedi.
Mhm.
And so they go into this meditative stance until they feel that they've remedied that. But for me, a Jedi committing suicide because of a mistake that they felt was something they did right at the time is I'm laying, to borrow the phrase, it's not the Jedi way. It's not.
Yeah.
So this did not sit well with me at all. But
Mhm.
how did you feel?
Well, it's hard to judge because we don't know everything yet on this.
Mhm.
And I was trying to decide if it was okay. So the Barash vow, the first one was taken by Jedi Master Barash that we saw in Charles Soule's comic from the Blade in
Right.
Phase 2 of the High Republic. But the whole concept was introduced in the Darth Vader comic. Master Infala was the Jedi that Vader hunted down to kill and take his kyber crystal to make his own Sith lightsaber. But the point of the Barash vow is that you've done something and you're attempting to atone, and you're
Right.
removing yourself from the business of the Jedi Order, and you spend some of that time in meditation. It's not solely devoted to meditation. It's removing yourselves from the policies and the wills of the Jedi so that you can try and get back into tune with the Force. And whatever it is, it's like, 10 years later, and he still hasn't done it. Or 16 years later at this point, he still has not reached this atonement here. And so he comes out of it, and to me, it seemed like he was not doing it over any sense of guilt. Like he couldn't live with himself. It was almost like it was an apology to May. And of course, in the next episode, we'll get a little bit of the backstory about what happened, but that clearly isn't the whole story of what
Mhm.
happened. And I think I had the advantage over you of being able to watch all these episodes in a much shorter proximity as opposed to
Mhm.
having to wait for another week in order to get some of that. So I don't like to see anyone commit suicide, but this canonically didn't bother me, I think, as much.
Mm. Yeah, I would have to disagree with you on that one
Mhm,
because I think about characters like Elzar Mann, for example,
mhm,
and he went through so much as well, and there could have been reasons for him to consider had the opportunity presented itself that he might have taken advantage of something like that. But
mhm.
I don't know. I just feel like this is not, like I said, it just doesn't feel like it's the Jedi way. But again, there may be some other things that we don't know about just yet. So, I can't write it off completely.
Sure, and I guess my pushback on that would be is like, but does everyone always do everything according to the Jedi way? I mean,
No.
Anakin surely did not. He murdered younglings. That's not the Jedi way, and he left the Jedi
Mhm.
Order. He fell to the dark side. We've had other, Ahsoka did not live up to the Jedi way. She left the Order, and so it is not a typical Jedi thing to do. But I don't think that's unheard of
Mhm.
necessarily. I don't think we've ever seen a Jedi commit suicide. None that
Right.
comes to mind, but plenty of things have happened where Jedi disagreed with or not necessarily disagreed. They fell out of the Jedi practice and have done things that were not quote unquote the Jedi way.
Mhm. Mhm. Mm. Point taken.
Yeah. But so yeah, so that's kind of where we get on that one. There is the confrontation between May and Master Soul that happens. And then we get our flashback episode 3. And it's 16 years prior to everything that we know now. We're on the world of Bryndock, and we've got Mother Anastasia, who's played by Joni Turner-Smith, and she's got this coven of witches to which the twins, May and Osha, belong. And this is like the eve of their ascension ritual, where they're going to basically take their place in the coven. May's all for it. Osha is not so sure. She wants to go out and do her own thing. And Soul ends up spying on them. And then the Jedi, which consists of Soul, Kanaka, Torben, and Indara, show up. And they make some questionable claims about their right to like test potentially force sensitive children and
Mhm.
how it's not acceptable to be training people in the Force. And then this all ends with May not being she can't accept that Osha doesn't want to become a witch, that she wants to go with the Jedi on this, and she sets a fire that we're led to believe kills everybody there at in this coven. So, what are your thoughts on all this on this backstory?
Well, this episode out of the 4 that we've gotten so far is by far my favorite, and I know that I'm in the minority on that from what I've seen online, but that's
Mhm,
okay. But you know me, I love a good backstory, so I really appreciated the dive into the origin story of these 2 twins and where they came from and what kind of society they came from and what made them split. And so, this whole world of Brendock and this coven of witches and the ascension ceremony and everything like that, I mean, it just is, for me anyways, just proof in the pudding of how there's just so many different ways to interpret the Force throughout the entire galaxy. Because of
Hmm.
course, you have the Night Sisters, and then, you have all of these different sects of Force users. And so this is yet just another one of those. Obviously, for May, she was all about preserving that particular type of quote unquote bloodline, if you will.
Hmm.
But Osha, not so much. And Osha kind of had her sights to the stars, and she appreciated what she thought the Jedi did, and she wanted to pursue that instead. And but I'm with you in terms of the way that Master Soul and the rest of the Jedi were like, "Oh, we have every right to test this child and basically take them from you if we think that they are worthy, quote unquote, enough, to, I'm clunking up the words, but you know what I
Hmm.
mean."
Sure.
And so that really does, for a lot of people in the galaxy, we've read and seen how people say, "Oh, the Jedi are baby stealers, they're children stealers." But that being said, it's interesting because they were so much older,
Hmm.
and so we've been kind of led to believe that children needed to be younger and younger and younger. And I think that maybe this is where that kind of comes from, that Yoda, being alive at this point in time, saw that maybe older children weren't exactly the best to try to bring into the Jedi Order. So maybe that was where it went the opposite direction. And so by the time we get to the Phantom Menace and Anakin is quote unquote too old, this is maybe why.
See, I agree with you. But I feel like the you don't train children that are older is already a rule at this time, based on some of the dialogue we had here. I wish we had the opportunity to record these as they came out, because we could have spent
Yeah.
an hour on this episode alone. I'm with you. This was a fascinating episode. I can't state right now which one of these episodes was my favorite, but I thought this one was really quite good. Um, you hit on so many of the reasons that are why there, because we had all this mysticism that comes around, the origin of May and Osha, and that conversation that Mother Anastasia had with Mother Coral. We need to touch on that in just a second here. But yeah, I mean, this was a lot that they packed into here. I kind of felt like the Jedi were a little bit wishy-washy in the way they talked to this coven and Mother Anastasia about what their rights are and what they could and they could not do. Because they're like, at one point Indar says, "We will test her with your permission, of course." Well, it's
Hmm.
either you have the right or you don't. I mean,
Right.
and so I was like, okay, so what are you doing there? And I feel like that part of the story is something that they are going to touch on again, because it's not like the Jedi at this time were hurting for younglings to train to become future Jedi, if you know
Hmm.
what I mean.
Hmm.
And but Soul was in, we get a shot of him like spying on May and Asha earlier in this, and it's like they were looking for something in particular almost. And I can't help but wonder if it wasn't the fact that there are these two twins that they suspect of having Force abilities that intrigue them on
Mm-hmm.
this, especially since we are getting tied up in all of this light side, dark side, yin yang type of imagery when it comes to these two as well. I mean, for one, they're always fighting and bickering and stuff like that. And it goes beyond, I think, just like typical children squabbling
Right.
there.
Right.
Maze desperately wants Osha to come into the cup, but and she gets unreasonably angry when Osha won't do it. When she decides she doesn't want to become one of these witches, she wants to go with the Jedi. And so I don't know. I wonder if there wasn't some sort of a notion of the Jedi. You know, uh, there's the prophecy of the chosen one with Anakin. Are we talking about some other prophecy maybe that as much as Qui-Gon believed in the prophecy of the chosen one, Soul's belief is looking for something in particular, and he thought he found it in Osha and May.
Right. Well, and kind of couple that too with the fact that this entire coven is created through no father. There's for example, Mother Coral was the one that carried the twins, as she said, But Mother Anastasia is the one that they kind of look to as they called them both mother, but I feel like Anastasia was the mom, you know what I mean? So perhaps there was some of that in there as well from the Jedi Order, kind of wondering, okay, well, how are these children even being incarnated,
Was
kind of
the
thing.
entire coven created that way, or was it just these two? Because I got the impression it was just Osha and May that were created.
Okay,
Because that,
and maybe I missed that part.
and because the thing is that because Coral like says defiantly to Anastasia at some point, "I carried them," and
Right.
Anastasia's response is, "Well, I created them." And
Mhm.
so it's it seems like there's some sort of force magic going on here that Mother Anastasia created them, but then Coral's the one that carried them and gave birth to them. But May and Osha live up to Anastasia as mom, and they carry
Right.
her last name on
Mhm.
that too. It's almost a surrogacy of some kind there.
Right, but there's only women there, so that's why I kind of assumed that that was sort of a weird force
Yeah, I
anomaly
hear
kind of
you. I
thing.
just kind of got the impression that the rest of them came to this coven from elsewhere, and that
Yeah,
this is what
yeah.
made Osha and May unique because there are no other children, and if this is something they could just do, why aren't they doing it?
Right. Yeah. And, to your point too about the fighting kind of going beyond the quote unquote normal,
Mhm,
sibling sort of rivalry, I almost wondered because we knew going into this that there was some huge tragedy that had happened that I almost wondered if perhaps there was going to be kind of a Sophie's choice moment
mhm,
in this. And we didn't get that. So we know that,
yeah.
both mothers perished in the fire itself, and maybe that was one of the impetus type things to why May and Osha didn't get along.
Right, and I'm wondering if this coven, and I don't know if Leslie Heslin thought of this or Lucasfilm thought of this or what, and or I'm just noticing similarities. Does this have any ties to the Path of the Open Hand?
Oh, interesting.
And the reason
Hear that.
I put that out is because they spent all this time talking about the thread and how using the force like impacts things elsewhere. And they're embracing it though, as
Mhm.
opposed to the path of the hand, which is like we don't use the force because what happens here will impact somebody someplace else.
Right.
And that similarity between these beliefs just jumped out to me. It was just that this coven is not concerned with the consequences of using the force.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
just that they know there are some.
Right. Interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
hmm Okay, so May loses it, locks Osha in a room, starts a fire, and we're told that this fire kills everybody else in the coven. I'm not sure I'm buying that. Are you?
No, I don't think so, especially given what we've seen so far of this and what we know about the whole, like, Russian doll idea kinda
Yeah.
thing. That
Not
yeah,
to
I think
mention that these people did
there's
not look like they were burned to death.
right, yeah, they were just kind of all in a heap, like yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, maybe it was smoke inhalation. I don't know, but they
Right.
certainly didn't burn to death.
Mhm.
And so, did the Jedi get in a fight with them? I didn't know
Mm.
necessarily any lightsaber burns, but hey, that's not the only way a Jedi can kill somebody.
Sure. Sure.
But
Yep,
I feel like
good
that's
questions.
another um, part of the story that will get revealed to us later.
Mhm.
Y- So, okay. Anything else you want to say about that before we get on to the next episode?
Um, no, I think I'm good.
Okay, yeah. Again, if we were doing this on a weekly basis, we'd have a lot more to say, but we're trying to
Right.
cover a lot here in one night, and my voice is not going to last too much longer. So, all right, though this week's episode, which is called Day, and May has gone to I can't remember what the name. Kofor, I think, is the name of the planet that Kelnaka is basically in isolation on, and she's gone there with the intention of killing him. Kamir is with May. He is this little former smuggler type that is also beholden to this mysterious master, and he's encouraging her. She has to do. She's got to deal with the master, and she's got to live up to it, and she has to kill a Jedi without using a weapon. Which, again, I'm not certain that that's exactly what this master was saying. And so they're trying to find Kofor. Kamir's already scouted out the way, and halfway there, May kind of changes her mind and decides that now that she knows Osha's alive, that's all that's important. She's going to find Kilnaka and turn herself in, only to get there and find that Kilnaka's been murdered already. And the Jedi show up just about the same time. And before that confrontation can really happen, the Master shows up, flicks his wrist, or its wrist, and sends Asha flying off. And then as the Jedi charge, it does a giant force push and sends them away. And that's where the episode ends. Where do you want to start on this one?
Oh gosh. Well, one thing that didn't really sit well with me on this one is just how completely like flip of the switch 180 snap of the fingers that May just turned from I'm all about revenge to, oh, my sister's alive. So everything's okay now and everything's all bright and sunny. Okay. I understand that the fact that she is alive probably made her happy, but she tried to kill her in the first place because of the fact that she left to go to the Jedi. So I'm like, oh, okay. I'm also very bummed that Kalnaka met his demise so quickly again after such a build up that we
We're gonna
had
get some
on
flashbacks
this.
with him.
Yeah, I'm
Based
sure.
on trailers that we've seen in action that hasn't
Yeah,
happened yet in this show. So, yeah, I was a little bummed that he
right,
died before we got to see him do anything, but we are
right,
going to get to see him
exactly.
do something. So,
But we did see a lot of those same markings and talismans and things that were from the Coven.
hmm
So that was a unique kind of a tie-in there as well. So, and obviously May had never been there, so someone else from her coven had.
or Kanaka just remembered him and did it himself,
Oh, perhaps.
which
Yep, that's
okay.
something I didn't consider.
Yeah. Okay. So this episode was clunky when it came down to it. I agree
Yes.
with you that the flip, I don't know that necessarily didn't sit well with me, but it was clunky and it was fast on that. And it was not particularly well reasoned. And the way they presented to us. This is one of the things that kind of remind me of some of George Lucas's clunky dialogue when it came down to it. There was a plot point that they were trying to achieve. I'm not sure they did the greatest job getting there, but it suggests that May's been fed a lie on this, that whoever this master is convinced her that the Jedi are responsible for everything that happened with Coven and the Jedi are responsible for Asha's demise. And that's not the case. And she's had this realization, and it's, and for her, it's wait a minute, I was in this to get revenge on the Jedi, but things aren't what I thought they were. But I feel like I just said that a whole lot clearer than this episode did. and so, maybe that could have been revised and made a little bit clearer.
Yeah, you're being very gracious with
Yeah.
this much more gracious with this episode than I am, of course. But
Okay.
I don't know. For me, it's just like, okay, May, she wanted to kill OSHA because she was going, it was almost like,
Yeah, that was
throwing
16
out the
years ago.
throwing out the baby with the bathwater kind of a thing is where she was with that.
Yeah.
So I
I
don't know.
guess I'm
Yeah.
forgiving of that plot point because they were kids and
Mm-hmm.
she was being impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
And who wouldn't have regrets and feel guilt after
Mm-hmm.
that?
Mm-hmm. Good
And
point.
so, that's why she's coming over these Jedi, because they kind of forced everything. If the Jedi hadn't shown up, she wouldn't have had that confrontation, because there would
Sure.
have been no Osha leaving to go with the Jedi, because that wouldn't have been a possibility. Now, Asha may not want to join the Coven, but she still wouldn't have left with the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, all good points. Yep.
But I feel like, okay, I'm going to be really disappointed if this master turns out to be Khmer. And I feel like
Mm.
and I kind of feel like that's something that's being teased a little bit. And it almost seems like it's too obvious a red herring, if you know what I mean.
Now that you point it out, I can see where you're going with that. I hadn't considered that, but it does make sense.
Yeah. And here's the thing, here's the argument in favor of this master being Khmer. Khmer said he scouted out and figured out where Kilnaka lived, and so he knew how to get there. Then, he also is talking about what it is the master wants. He seems to have a very good idea of what the master wants. And even though he's selling it, it's like, oh, the master collects people. He's collected May and he's collected Khmer, because May asks, like, what are you doing, working for him? He's like, oh, he's gotten into me. He collects people. But then May traps him and we don't see him again, but all of a sudden the master's there.
Mhm.
So they're creating an awful lot of conveniences in order to do
Mhm.
this, and to me it seems almost too obvious
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, and especially when they're talking about this, this isn't going to go the way you think type of thing when it comes to the show. But that being said, I don't know who the master could be. Is it one of the witches from the coven? Is it Mother Anastasia herself? That's a possibility. But I
Mhm.
feel like whoever this master is, since they're going to such great pains to keep their identity secret, they almost have to comply with one of the golden rules of mysteries where it has to be someone we've already met.
Ah, I can
Otherwise,
see that.
otherwise, because it's not like this is set during the original trilogy, and it could be some character that we're aware of as Star Wars fans. But there you go. It in order for this mystery to pay off, it can't just be somebody random.
Mhm. So you're saying it's kind of like a, "Oh, by the way, yes, Senator Palpatine has been Darth Sidious the whole time," kind of thing. Someone that's been
Yeah,
right under our nose.
yes, and that
Mhm.
works.
Mhm.
But there's a golden rule of mysteries that comes from Agatha Christie and others, those, and that you typically have to meet your murderer or the person that's behind everything early on in the story, somewhere
Mhm.
early enough in the story that it can't be introduced at someone at the last second, and then there it is, because you have to give the audience a fair chance to figure out what's going on or follow the
Mhm.
clues. You can't have someone figure this out based off of off-screen, off-page information.
Okay.
And you're maybe asking, what does Agatha Christie got to this? This is a mystery show. It's
It
Star
is.
Wars, but it's a Star
Mhm.
Wars mystery. And so you have to follow some of those same rules. And so it seems like, maybe there's clever writers out there and they could figure out how to introduce somebody new and make it pay off for us. It could be one of the other Sith Lords that preceded Palpatine and Plagueis and, or Tenebrous for that matter.
Mhm.
But I feel like in order for it to work as this type of mystery, it has to be somebody we've met.
Mhm.
It can't be a Marok from Ahsoka.
Mhm. No, I agree. I do agree. Yep.
So we'll see what
Those are
happens there.
good points.
But yeah, so that kind of gets us through the 4 episodes on a very, very high level, and we'll definitely spend more time on episode 5 individually when we get there next week. But any other thoughts on the Acolyte before we wrap it up?
Well, it as usual, it did really help to break this down and have some discourse about these episodes as far as, again, just like trying these shoes on, these new shoes
Hmm.
on for size. There's definitely still some growing pains with this series for me.
Hmm.
And that's okay. It's one of those things that we've always said that just because it's Star Wars doesn't mean that we have to absolutely be in love with it from the get-go, and that I am very eager to see how the rest of this series plays out. But what about you?
It's an intriguing show. It's one of these that, since it is a mystery, that for me, it's really going to take all the episodes before I can judge the whole thing,
Mhm.
because none of them are really capable of standing on their own, like with the exception of maybe episode 3,
Right.
because that
No, I
did
agree.
tell a story. The rest of them are really going to be dependent on the outcome of this whole thing. Whereas you look at Ahsoka, for instance, the Shadow Warrior episode taken by itself is a phenomenal episode,
Mhm.
and it's not dependent on the rest of the series in order to be great. Where I feel like a lot of these episodes are, the sum of the whole is going to be greater than the individual parts. So
No, I totally agree.
yeah, so we'll see, but I'm eager to find out more. I'm and to get some more pieces for that mystery resolved for us.
Yes, I totally agree with that as well.
Okay, okay. Well, so it seems like we're in on this, but we're reserved.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fair. That is a very fair, yes, assumption.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
And
and
that's
I still
okay.
yeah, and I encourage people to check it out, and
Oh, for sure.
so we can all enjoy the mystery together. And we'll be talking about this more in more depth next week. But we just have so much to catch up on. We're behind on our monthly features with the Phantom Menace and World Between Worlds and everything. We're trying to get caught up on those, and then we'll be able to spend a little bit more time on the Acolyte for the final 4 episodes. Okay.
Mhm.
But with that said, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of the beginning of the Acolyte. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to get our takes on the remaining episodes, then make sure you've subscribed to the podcast. You know how to do that on your podcast of choice, and you'll get all those episodes as they appear, one per week. I'd also like to remind you that you can find our entire catalog of past shows, all previous 744 of them, over at retrozap.com, which is home to a bunch of other great podcasts covering all kinds of things. And again, if you've appreciated the show and you want to do something for us, the best thing you can do is to leave a 5-star rating review on your podcatcher choice, especially if that's Apple Podcasts. And the next best thing you can do is to share the show on social media with your friends. So, Jay, how does everybody do that?
Well, everybody can do that very easily on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Podcast Stardust. And you can also hit us up on our many other social media outlets, including Pinterest, YouTube, and YouTube Music. So head over to all of those, like, subscribe, and share those out with your friends. And we also have a Discord room where you can hit us up for some real-time chatter. The link to that is in our show notes, as well as our TeePublic store, which has 7 different show logo designs available for Podcast Stardust. So you can get tote bags to take to the beach. You can get wall hangings, t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, all kinds of fun stuff. And the link for that is also in our show notes. And we are still collaborating with Saber Masters. So if you are in need of a lightsaber to fight off the mysterious Sith Lord, you can head over to sabermasters.com and you can check out one of lots and lots of different lightsabers that they have over there. And if you do happen to pick anything up, make sure when you add to cart that you also add the code Stardust at checkout, and that will earn you an extra $10 off of your purchase, and it also helps to support the show. So the link to that will be in our show notes, and once again, you can also head to sabermasters.com. So with that, Dennis, why don't you fill everybody else up on what's going on with you and your other internet trappings? I know you've had some other things going on with travel, as everyone knows, but what you got going on?
All right, so my wife and I are talking Star Trek over on Warp Trails, which is a RetroStat podcast feed exclusive. We have a few episodes left in season 5 of Discovery that we haven't got to. We are trying to figure out how to catch up on that. It may just end up being one catch-up episode. We'll see, but we got a little bit more travel to go through, so who knows? But we definitely want to talk about that. We're a few episodes behind. A lot of that concluded while we were on vacation, so there you go. So if you like Star Trek, you like Discovery, you like Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, or Picard, head over to Zap and check out the show. Jay, I know you have a new elf fairy type cosplay that looked really good on. So why don't you tell everybody about that and everything else you got going on?
Oh, thank you. So yes, cosplay, just when I say, oh, I'm going to take it easy with cosplay, I'm like squirrel and something else happens to come up. So you can check out all of my cosplay adventures on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. So you can check out all of my previous and current, such as Ahsoka, 2 different forms of Hera, one from Rebels, one from the Ahsoka series, my 4th sister Inquisitor, my original concept Mandalorian, and Dennis, as you were just alluding to, I got an opportunity to go to a Fae masquerade as part of an event that I helped with Rubber City Cosplay here in Akron. And so it was my first time dressing as a Fae/fairy, and I loved it. So I am embracing that. And so you can check that new cosplay out on my Instagram at j.snipscosplay.
All right. So upcoming on the show this Monday, we get back into our Phantom Menace series for the 25th anniversary of that movie. And then on Wednesday, Jay is rounding up Star Wars fashion and lifestyle products in World Between Worlds. So thanks for listening to episode 745 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.